It happens in the middle of a perfectly ordinary moment. You're sitting in a restaurant you've never been to. A friend says something. The waiter walks by. And then it hits you. This exact thing has happened before. This exact table. This exact sentence. This exact feeling of the light hitting the glass. You know, somehow, that you've already been here. Except you haven't. You've never been to this restaurant. Your friend just made that joke up on the spot. And yet your brain is screaming at you that this moment is a memory. That the future you're living right now is somehow also the past. That feeling has a name. Deja vu. French for already seen. And for something that happens to roughly 60 to 70% of people on this planet at some point in their lives, we barely understand it at all. What we do know is strange enough to make you question whether your brain is actually keeping up with reality, or whether it's quietly rewriting it without telling you. Here's the part that should make you stop. It might be doing both. 100,000 years of human history, hundreds of billions of people, every single one of them at some point froze in the middle of a moment they'd never lived and felt absolutely certain they had. Philosophers called it mystical. Priests called it dangerous. Scientists called it too slippery to study. And nobody, for most of recorded history, had any real idea what was actually happening inside the skull when it hit. That changed in 2006. That year, psychologist Chris Moulon at the University of Leeds began tracking people who experienced deja vu, not occasionally, but every single day. Patients who sat down in their doctor's office absolutely convinced they'd had this exact appointment before. Patients who stopped watching television because every episode, every scene, every line of dialogue felt like a rerun, even when it wasn't. One man quit reading newspapers entirely. Every headline, every article, every story already read, he was certain he hadn't. His brain was stamping brand new information with a label that said, "You already know this." And that right there, brand new information wearing the label of old memory, is the key to everything. Here's what's actually happening inside your head during a normal memory moment. Your brain runs two systems at the same time. The first system handles familiarity, a fast, automatic gut check that fires before you've even consciously registered what you're looking at. Known or unknown, familiar or foreign. It decides in milliseconds. The second system handles recollection, the slower, deliberate process of actually pulling up the specific memory, the context, the detail, the story behind the face. These two systems are supposed to work together. You see a face. Familiarity fires first. Yes, known. Then recollection fills in the rest. Your college roommate, third floor. That god-awful band he played at 2 a.m. Deja vu is what happens when they split apart. Familiarity fires. Something is recognized. Something is known. But recollection comes up completely empty. There's no memory to retrieve, no story, no source, just the raw feeling of recognition with nothing behind it. And your brain, faced with a feeling that has no explanation, does something almost human. It assumes the explanation must exist somewhere, that the memory is there, just out of reach. And the result is that specific skin-prickling sensation that the moment you're standing inside has already happened. But here's what nobody in the history of this research expected to find. In 2016, neuroscientist Akira O'Connor at the University of St. Andrews published findings from the first study to actually trigger deja vu inside a brain scanner. He used a hypnosis technique, implanting a false sense of familiarity for a word, then blocking the person's conscious access to it. The structure left behind was identical to natural deja vu, recognition without a source. And then he watched what the brain did next. It wasn't the memory regions that lit up. It was the frontal lobes, the decision-making cortex, the parts of the brain responsible for conflict detection, error checking, and reality monitoring. Your brain wasn't breaking down. It was running a diagnostic. This is the part that flips everything. O'Connor's interpretation, and it's the most compelling one on the table right now, is that deja vu might actually be a sign that your brain's fact-checking system is functioning exactly as it should. The frontal lobe detects a conflict. This feels familiar, but I have no evidence it should. It flags the error, and it surfaces that flag into your conscious awareness as that strange, unsettling, slightly electric feeling. The weirdness isn't the malfunction. The weirdness is the alarm. Your brain catching itself mid-error and showing you the receipt. So why does it happen more when you're young? Deja vu peaks between ages 15 and 25 and drops off sharply after that. Think about what those years actually are. More new places than you've ever been. New people. New situations arriving faster than any filing system can handle. The brain is building memory infrastructure at full speed, under full load, and occasionally the timestamps get smudged. The familiarity system outruns the recollection system, and the gap between them, that brief, disorienting gap, is deja deja vu, which means if you're older and it barely happens to you anymore, there's an uncomfortable possibility. It might mean your life has genuinely gotten less new. And if you're young and it hits you weekly, your brain is sprinting. It can't keep up with what you're giving it. That's not a flaw. That's what full capacity feels like. Now here's the layer that makes the modern world suddenly make sense. Psychologist Alan S. Brown at Southern Methodist University spent years studying what he called the priming effect on deja vu, the idea that brief, unregistered exposures to things can later produce the feeling of false recognition. You walked past a restaurant 2 years ago. You were on your phone. You didn't look up. You didn't consciously register the sign, the window, the color of the door, but your visual system caught it anyway, filed something so faint it barely left a trace, a ghost of a data point. And now 2 years later, sitting inside that same restaurant for the very first time, your familiarity system is firing, and your recollection system is drawing a blank. Because there's nothing to recollect, just the cold residue of a moment you were never consciously present for. Your brain has been collecting evidence your whole life without once asking your permission. You're walking around carrying impressions, echoes, fragments, thin slivers of every street you half saw, every face you clocked for a quarter of a second, every room you passed through without thinking. They don't live in your memory. They live somewhere below it. And occasionally, when the present moment lines up with one of them, the familiarity system fires, and you feel the past in a moment that has never happened. Now think about what the modern world has done to this system. 50 years ago, the average person encountered maybe a few hundred strangers in a week, a handful of new places per month. The brain's exposure log stayed manageable. Now you scroll through hundreds of faces before you've had your morning coffee. You've technically seen more restaurants, more streets, more strangers, more interiors in a single week of social media than your grandparents encountered in a year of living. Most of it half-registered, thumb moving before the image fully loads. None of it consciously filed. Your familiarity system is getting pinged thousands of times a day. Your recollection system is getting almost none of that data. The gap between them, the exact gap that produces deja vu, has never in human history been wider, which means when you sit down somewhere real and the alarm goes off, it's not your brain breaking. It's your brain trying to reconcile a world that is moving faster than any biological system was ever built to track. That flicker of impossible recognition, that's the receipt. Proof that somewhere, in some moment you were too distracted to notice, the world quietly registered itself inside you. Most of those moments disappear without a trace. Every once in a while, one surfaces, and your brain, to its credit, notices the discrepancy, flags it, makes sure you feel it. In a world designed to make you scroll past everything, deja vu is the one moment your own mind forces you to stop. If someone you know brushes this off as a glitch or a past life, share this with them, because what's actually firing inside their skull in that moment is more extraordinary than any supernatural explanation ever could be. And the next time it happens to you, frozen in the middle of some unremarkable Tuesday, don't shake it off. Stay in it for just a second. That feeling is your brain doing something almost miraculous, catching a lie, correcting the record, refusing to let a false memory go unchallenged. In a mind that processes millions of inputs and gets almost all of them silently right, deja vu is the rare moment it shows you its work. That's not a glitch. That's the most human thing your brain does.